Philips SHP9500s. Let me point out that they're the 9500s, not the 9500X. And X? No, S. There's a big difference as far as the packaging goes. But as far as the headphones themselves, people have confirmed that they are relatively identical. So similar, in fact, that they're really not worth comparing. And yeah, I heard the 9500S at some point, and I've heard these. And I can say that, yeah, they're quite similar in sound. So whichever of the two you get, don't worry about whichever one of the two it is. They're pretty much the same thing. The only things that change are the outside packaging, meaning the label of the box, and this cable. It comes with a different cable. That one comes with a shorter Philips cable, whereas this one comes with a longer Philips cable. Both, I'm assuming, that are the same materials and just different lengths. Right. So as far as the cable that comes with this one's really nice. I mean, it's not like a fantastic cable, but look, it doesn't have a lot of memory, which is perfect because it stays straight. That's what you want. It's a 3.5 to 3.5, and it comes with an adapter right here, so you can plug into your amp. This is really nice. Best part of all about it being 3.5 is that you can just buy a shorter cable, maybe with an inline mic and remote, and it'll work perfectly fine with your smartphone. Or you can buy a V-Moto Boom Pro for it and use it for gaming, or use that same inline mic and remote for gaming as well. Whichever of the two you want to do, it's up to you. You got the option. It's 3.5 millimeters, which is fantastic. But let's get into headphone itself. So they come in this package right here, and within this bag right here that keeps it protected from dust and stuff like that. And I would recommend you kind of keep the bag just to stuff them in there whenever you're going to go a longer period of time without listening to them, just so that dust doesn't get in, because these are crazy open, which means that a lot of dust is going to get in if you don't take good care of them. So, and also if you live in a sandstorm. It comes inside this packaging, which is pretty sturdy. It's obviously cardboard, but it keeps them together pretty well. And I have no complaints about it. For $80, they seem to be pretty well protected for shipping and for storing them in here if you ever need to take them somewhere else. Like you're moving out of town or you need to go out of town for a few days. You can just take them in the packaging and no complaints there. Let's jump into the headphones themselves here. Let's take them out. And you've got this quote-unquote beauty/beast. These, in my eyes, are very pretty and also very ugly at the same time. Yeah, aesthetically, these are not quite the best in class per se. But then again, you're an audio dude. You're not here because the headphones look pretty. You're here because they sound good, and then if they look pretty, that's an extra bonus, right? You can see it from here. Look at that. There's the driver, and inside it says SHP9500. It's really nice. But like I said, crazy open, so keep that in mind. The build quality itself is pretty nice for this price point. It's like made out of a hard plastic that, well, whether it breaks or not is kind of questionable, but at this price point, if you take care of them and you don't treat them badly, you're not roughhousing with them, I'd say they'll last you quite a few years and you'd have nothing to worry about. Now, the only kind of metal that's present here, apart from the drivers and the grills, of course, is in the headband, this thing right here. Look at these big numbers that you can adjust it to. The 4.5 right there. It's not a 5, it's in between the 4 and 5. That's what I keep it to. And they're very, like solid, you know, the transition between numbers is like a very solid transition. It's not just like sliding it and, oh, it kind of stays in place. No. It stays perfectly fine. Build quality, the materials in the headband and the cups, the head, the ear pads. On the hand, it does not feel very comfortable. It kind of feels like a couch, more or less. It feels a little weird. But then you put it on your head and you completely forget about it because they are the most comfortable headphones I have ever put on my head. And that's saying a lot. That's more comfortable than the K7XX, which are my like daily driver for everything but music. They're more comfortable than the HD800S, which are a really expensive headphone from Sennheiser. And although they're very comfortable, these are even more comfortable, if you can even believe that. Yeah, that's as far as build goes. Comfort, like I said, very, very comfortable. You don't need to worry about switching on pads or anything. And if you do, only switch to velour pads, because protein pads like pleather, sheepskin pads, anything that's very closed off like that is going to really isolate the sound that comes out of these. And you're going to have some really harsh treble and some really bloated bass. So just avoid that. Just stick to velour pads or the stock pads, because those are your best choices for Philips SHP9500s. As far as amping goes, this is a 32 ohm headphone with a 101 sensitivity decibel, sensitivity. So you do not need an amp to power these, but of course an amp will always help a little bit. In this case, it's only a little bit. Really, you can get away with driving these off of a smartphone and be perfectly fine. So amp recommended as usual, but certainly not required for this one. That's pretty cool for me. See, because what that tells me is I can buy a short cable with an inline mic and remote, like I said, plug this in, and then go around my house and do whatever it is I need to do. I don't have to be tethered to my desk, because these don't need a whole lot of power, and these can have a short cable and they could run perfectly fine. Now we'll get to the usability later on. Let's start off with the bass. Bass on this in the sub-bass region is quite rolled off, as you would expect from an open back dynamic headphone. The mid bass, however, has, I wouldn't say a huge hump or anything, but it's definitely not what I would perceive to be neutral. It would be an ever so slight rise, but nothing to complain about. This, however, can make the bass a tad more enjoyable to listen to than some headphones, while not reaching those extreme levels of overemphasis that makes them considered like fun headphones or bassy headphones or not hi-fi anymore. No. These are still within hi-fi range a whole lot. And the bass on these is just really, really surprising for their price point and for what they are, which is an open back dynamic headphone. I was able to enjoy EDM plenty with these. Rock and metal was even more enjoyable because it kept the area clean for the mids and the highs, but at the same time gave you plenty of punch in that kick bass and those the crunch and the crunch in the guitars and stuff like that from the low end in metal. That's pretty nice. Now getting to the mids. These are kind of interesting. Vocals are a little forward, ever so slightly, but it's a little more like the instruments are taking a little bit of a step back so that the vocals can do their thing, right? It's not like the vocals are up, the instruments are a little down, if that makes any sense, right? So the vocals still have that separation and distinction to be able to function and to be able to be listened to the way that they're supposed to be listened to. But it just works a little differently than what I've heard from headphones typically, where it's not that they're very forward, it's that the other instruments are somewhat pulled back and the vocals are a slight bit forward. That's a pretty decent combo that I've never really heard before, and I really enjoyed them on this headphone. It's pretty nice. I do have to point out things in the mids that really, really stood out to me a lot would be guitars. The electric guitars and acoustic guitars, it felt like they had their own space within the headphone to play from and to be listened to. They didn't sound like they were part of the rest of the instruments. They sounded like they were their own thing. And they sounded really, really, it was really discernible. Very, very easy to distinguish the guitars from the rest of the instruments. And I like that a lot. Vocals. Background vocals tend to be a tad more forward than average, which is something I never heard before in mids. It wasn't that they were like they were a little more clear because they were a little more forward. But instead of the usual where background vocals give the main vocalist their space, the lead vocalist their space, they stepped forward and they kind of joined in like, no, you're not getting the spotlight. We're joining you. And they all sing kind of like right beside each other, but not in a bad way. Unless you're going for that absolute reference sound where it has to be exactly like the artist intended. This is quite a change. It's quite a difference in vocals that I've never really heard before. And I really enjoyed that. Now, overall, I could describe the tonality to be, if anything, ever so slightly too thin, but not too thin for my tastes. Just the sound isn't very thick at all. It's quick. It's a quick sound, but it's not what I would consider to be 100% reference per se, accurate as far as the vocals go. If anything, they could be a slight too thin, but no issues there. The treble. Oh my God, these are detailed, like detailed for days with these headphones. It's a really strange thing. Well, I guess not really strange, but I'm saying strange because of the price point, right? These give you a whole lot of detail, a whole lot of separation, a whole lot of ways to distinguish stuff like cymbals and the hi-hats and stuff like that. But it does get a tad too sibilant for my tastes. Now, originally, I felt it was a tad too sibilant, but then after using these for a little while, I got like 90% used to the sibilance, and now I don't really care about it anymore. Now it's like I perceive 10% of that sibilance, and it's like, oh, okay, well, yeah, it's a little sibilant, but I don't care because they sound very good, and my ears adjusted to that. The only way I would see that this could not happen for you is if you're used to something extremely dark like the 650s or 6XX, those, or the LCD-2Cs that have like zero treble, well, not zero treble, but very, very, very lean back and very relaxed signature. And then you switch to these that have kind of like the opposite effect. And you just, either you won't get used to them, or you'll get so used to them that when you go back to the 6XX or the LCD-2Cs, you're going to be like, hey, where's the treble? Where's the air? Where are my instruments from? I can't perceive anything. But that's just because your ears went through such a dramatic change in sound that they don't like the old sound anymore. They want the new sound. And that's what these may do to you, for better or worse. For better, in my opinion, but for worse, if you're someone who really, you've invested quite a lot on the dark sound signature path. You've paired dark headphones with brighter amps so that so that it's a little more balanced. And then these come along and just kind of ruin everything. And now you have to get your entire equipment from brand new. Then that could be an issue. But one thing I did notice though, as far as the amping goes, by the way, they sound a little more treble heavy through using an actual dedicated, DAC and amp, as opposed to using it from a smartphone. If you're using it from a smartphone, it sounds closer to neutral. And that's something I kind of liked, especially because, well, these could be used off a smartphone. That was quite a difference that I thought was pretty interesting to me. I figured, this is something that you could definitely use and be like, well, I can get this kind of sound signature from mobile and then get this kind of sound signature if I plug it into my DAC and amp. And yeah, it's certainly there. So it's quite enjoyable. And as far as everything else goes, because there's no real need to amplify the headphones from a dedicated, DAC and amp setup, you can pretty much get away with it and not notice a true, like a lack of bass or thinner mids and stuff like that if you power it off of a smartphone. I really did not perceive stuff like that, other than not so sharp of a treble. And I found that to be pretty good. The Soundstage, these are crazy open. And I mean crazy open. Like, do not take these anywhere out of your house or anywhere out of the, your workspace or whatever. Actually, why did I say workspace? Please don't take these to work. Everyone will see you, everyone will hear you, and they will think you are some kind of weirdo because you're listening to anime noises at 3 p.m. instead of working on those spreadsheets like you're supposed to. But hey, whatever suits you. I'm just saying you can't do that at work with these on because people will hear you and you'll be fired. So it's up to you there. Imaging is surprisingly excellent for the price. I mean, yeah, you could definitely use these for gaming and get away with it, despite the fact that, well, they're more, they lean towards the competitive side more than they do the laid back, and enjoy the show kind of part, kind of headphone. I would strongly recommend using these for competitive gaming because you can hear like footsteps and the imaging lets you hear out where people are, left, right, up, down, stuff like that, much better. And it's overall a better headphone for competitive gaming as opposed to a more laid back and treble shy sound signature. And you can pair it up with a V-Moto Boom Pro, which is a double bonus. Now, I tried these with Santana tracks, right? Santana has some excellent imaging because he has some awesome recording in his music. And it's acoustic music. So headphones like these that are supposed to be better for acoustic music will make it sound better. Or just, will not generalize. They'll be more specific towards that kind of music and they'll be better for it, right? And yeah, these were an absolute joy with Santana music, with Santana's tracks. I mean, pretty much any one of them. It's just easy to distinguish where everything is from. The imaging is fantastic. And everything sounds great. Nothing sounds harsh in any way. It all sounds very natural to me. Like I said, if not a tad too thin, then everything sounds very natural to me. Now to conclude, get these for competitive gaming in an area where you won't bother people with the noise. If you want, pair up a Boom Pro to it, or you can just use an inline mic, but that tends to be a shorter cable, so that's up to you. If you're someone that's like finally realizing that their Beats Pros are not the apex of audio out there, and you're finally saying, okay, look, I've come with an open mind, show me what you have, audio world. You can definitely pick one of these up and be like, yeah, this is certainly different. Might be hard to get used to not having so much bass, and then having like dead treble. But you can get used to it and you will like the fact that you'll have much more detail present as opposed to with your older headphones that were like Bose or Beats or even the Sonys, like Bluetooth models and stuff like that aren't as detailed and they have that like plain paper Bluetooth sound to them because some people just refuse to use the wire. But hey, yeah, excellent introduction to hi-fi. Another thing is, if you are an older person, if you are of a more advanced age and your hearing has gone a little down the drain, then you can definitely pick these up and not be as bothered by the treble. Actually, you won't be bothered by the treble at all because the amount of like too much treble is just this much. So as a person with an advanced age, you can get these, and then if anything, just be bothered for like the first day or two while your ears adjust to them, and then never be bothered by them again. And they'll just feel like a very natural, very neutral headphone to a person with that type of limitation with audio, right? If you want these to chill, like 100% just chill and lean back, you're probably going to have to turn down the volume a tad bit just so that it's not like too sibilant or too, how do you say it, like active. Like they're not a lean back and just like fall asleep with them. They're more of a, you're up and at them and you're listening and you're picking out details kind of headphones. So in order to lean back and relax, you're probably going to have to turn down the volume a bit, which is something I Strongly recommend for a student. Let's say you're studying, right? You're studying at home, right? And you don't want to listen to music at a loud volume because it'll distract you, but you want something quiet to help you focus and just to provide background noise. These would be excellent for that because they're quote unquote, higher treble, sharper treble will allow you to be able to distinguish the music and the instruments better at lower volumes because you won't need to turn it up as much to be able to distinguish instruments and to pick out details. So I definitely recommend it for low levels, quiet studying. So yeah, these have been legendary for a reason, right? People all over the internet aren't saying, oh, the Philips SHP9500's the kings of budget audio and they're so great and whatever. They wouldn't be saying that if there wasn't some merit to what they were saying. And after listening to these, that's a hair right there. I strongly agree. These are quite special and definitely have their own place within the Hall of Fame of audiophilia. Yeah, I agree.